The year is 1921, and you are wrestling with some major life decision. A potential business opportunity, is she the one? Whatever. And a friend of yours suggests you go see somebody who could help. Someone who might have a way of knowing which decision would work out best. So you go to this person's house, they have a nice little waiting room, and you sit there and you wait with a glass of water, and eventually a slender man with glasses walks in and ushers you into his office. In the office is a fainting couch, a little settee that you often see in psychiatrists' offices where they ask people to lay down and get comfortable while the psychiatrist probes the depths of their psyche. But before you get a chance to sit on the couch, the guy lays down on it first and then just takes a nap. And then the guy starts talking in his sleep and muttering some very specific information about you and predicting things that are going to happen in your future. This is the experience shared by thousands of people when they enlisted the help of Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce was born in Hopkinsville, Kentucky in 1877. Hopkinsville, Kentucky is also famously known as the place where 7 million blackbirds congregated in 1975. That's according to the opening scroll in the movie Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, so it's a pretty good source. Anyway, according to the official website for Edgar Cayce, his psychic abilities began in childhood, but really his childhood wasn't any different from any other person's childhood. You know, he played with imaginary friends, he memorized the contents of books by sleeping on them, he communicated with his dead grandfather. He was also visited by a woman with wings in the woods one day while he was reading his Bible, telling him that all of his prayers were going to be answered when he became a missionary. Normal childhood stuff. All kidding aside, Cayce was a very devout Christian, and he did want to help people. And his way of helping people was to do psychic readings for them, of which he did 14,000. And the way he did his readings was he would basically just lay down on a couch, fall asleep, go into a bit of a trance state, and then just start talking, and his secretary would write down what he said. He claimed that he could connect to a universal consciousness or a superconscious mind when he was in this sleep state. So people would ask him questions, and then he would answer back what the universal consciousness told him. Because of this, he became known as the sleeping prophet, but some people also call him the father of modern holistic medicine. More than half of Cayce's readings dealt with health-related topics, and he was a huge proponent of locally grown and seasonal foods. The diet he recommended falls in line with what we call today the Mediterranean diet. He also suggested through his readings that people get outside more, exercise more, drink more water, eat more vegetables, learn how to relax. These are all things that we know today to be a good thing. So yeah, go superconscious mind. He also did predict some things while he was in this trance-like state, and he got some things right. There was a stock market crash in 1925 that he predicted before it happened, and he also predicted the big market crash of 1929. Much like Obi-Wan Kenobi felt a great disturbance in the Force, Edgar Cayce said this: "We may expect a considerable break in bear market, see? This issue being between those of the reserves of nations and of individuals and will cause a great disturbance in financial circles." Expect a considerable break in bear market, see? Another one of his predictions that came true was World War II, which he predicted in 1935, 4 years before we entered the war. He predicted that Austrians, Germans, and Japanese would be involved and said, quote, "Unseen and gradually growing to those affairs where there must become, as it were, almost a direct opposition to that which has been the theme of the Nazis, for these will gradually make for a growing of animosities." Other predictions of his that came true, or seemed to be coming true, was he predicted the finding of the Dead Sea Scrolls, he predicted communication mergers happening in communication companies, and he predicted the use of blood as a diagnostic tool. Now before we start hitting a woo-woo alarm, let's just be honest here. He did 14,000 readings. You're gonna accidentally get some things right. But he also made some claims that are pretty, not real. He predicted China would become an overwhelmingly Christian nation by 1968. He predicted New York City would be destroyed in a cataclysm and California would fall off into the ocean, which has happened in multiple movies, so... A lot of Cayce's critics point out that he didn't really have beyond a grammar school education, that he got really involved in occult practices and stuff like that, and he had medical readings that he did, and he had some good health advice, but he also had friends who were medical doctors. One of his critics named Dale Beyerstein actually pointed out that in the first 9 years that he gave readings, he was actually accompanied by a guy named Al Lane, who was a medical doctor and a friend of his. Interesting thing about Lane, he was also a hypnotist, and at one point in his life, Cayce had laryngitis and wasn't able to speak for like a few years. And apparently Lane was able to turn that around with hypnosis, and then some of his patients became some of Cayce's first readings. Another criticism of Cayce is that he often had information about people's medical histories before he actually met with them, because they did tell him in the letters that they sent him. According to the magician and skeptic James Randi, he says, "To one who's been through dozens of similar diagnoses as I have, the methods are obvious. It is merely a specialized version of generalization techniques of fortune tellers." Now, there is some pushback on that specific criticism, though, because apparently there were many of his diagnoses that were not precluded by some kind of letter. Now, regardless of whether he got his information from a medical buddy that was sitting right next to him or the universal consciousness, his health advice was actually pretty sound. Drink more water, get more exercise, rest, that kind of stuff. But you have to balance some of that against some of his crazier readings, like these. He predicted a death ray from Atlantis would be discovered, that Atlantis would rise again, that Armageddon would take place in 1999, that a Hall of Records would be found under the Sphinx, that most of Japan will disappear into the sea, and that the Great Lakes will empty into the Gulf of Mexico. I don't think he understands how water works. All of those predictions I just listed are things that should have happened by now. But what about the things that haven't happened yet that he says are going to happen? Well, here's a few. One of his predictions was that our lifespans would be greatly extended. Cayce said, "Man should live much longer than has been ordinarily given, and will." Given all the research and medicine that's been put toward extending our lifespans, that doesn't seem like too much of a stretch. He also predicted that a design for self-fueling perpetual motion machines will be discovered. He did make it clear that he wasn't talking about an airplane, though, because specifically when somebody asked if he was talking about the same machine that Charles Lindbergh used, his response was, and I quote, "No." Finally, Cayce predicted that ocean levels will rise. There's many other people predicting that as well these days. James Randi said in the film Flim Flam that Cayce was fond of expressions like, "I feel that," and "perhaps," qualifying words used to avoid positive declarations. It's a common tool in the psychic trade. But Cayce's retort to that is that a prophecy is never given as anything more than a warning, and a successful prophecy is one that avoids that thing happening in the first place. Kind of convenient. Now, there's still a lot of people out there that believe in Edgar Cayce and the predictions that he made. There's still a whole society out there that supports his work. How do you feel about it? Are you on the James Randi side, saying that all of this is just quackery and buffoonery? Do you think there might actually be something to the sleeping prophet and the warnings that he gave us? Talk about it down below. All right, please like and share this video if you liked it, and if this is your first time here, maybe check out this video. Google thinks you'll like that, or any of the others down on the side with my face on it. And if you like any of them, I do invite you to subscribe, because I come back with videos every Monday and every Thursday. You'll be the first to see them. All right, I'll leave you with that. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week, and I'll see you on Monday. Love you guys. Take care.